Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. Today we're going to do the Midyear Freakout Tag. I thought this would be a fun way to summarize the books that I've read so far this year and highlight a few of my favorites. I first saw this tag on the Library of Alexandria, and I'll link his video down below. I have read 34 books so far. 50% of the books I read this year were fantasy, a quarter were science fiction, and the remaining 25% were a mixture of romance and mystery. I have the questions for the tag right here, so let's get started. The first question is, what is the best book that you've read so far? And I'm hedging a little bit here because I'm going to list the entire trilogy, the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, the first book of which is the 5th season. I sat on reading this trilogy for so long. It was one of those series that was so hyped and so talked about that it actually put me off a little bit from reading it. And I went into it with really high expectations. I actually started reading the book several years ago and had to put it down because there are some real gut punches in the opening scenes that are hard to read. But I encourage you to push through them and really fall into this world of a mixture of science fiction and fantasy that is upping modern day science fiction fantasy writing. The next question is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far in 2021? And that honor belongs to A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martin. Sequel to A Memory Called Empire. In this second installment, we got to explore off-planet a little bit and see more of the military side to the Tixkalani Empire, as well as a little bit of Liesel Station, where our main character comes from. And the interaction that our main characters have with the invading aliens, so to speak, was very well done. A Desolation Called Peace is definitely more of a first contact story compared to A Memory Called Empire, which is more a fish out of water style as the story's getting set up. I loved A Memory Called Empire, and I think I might have liked A Desolation Called Peace even more. New 2021 release you haven't read yet. I just did a video on some anticipated reads that I have on hold at the library, so all of those still stand. I'm going to mention one that didn't make that list at that time, and that's 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is a retelling of the Goose Girl or the Seven Swans story, which I didn't actually realize was a folk tale until I learned about this book, and I realized that another book that I will talk about on my channel soon, which is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier, is also a retelling of the same folktale, but from a more medieval Irish fairy standpoint. 6 Crimson Cranes is about a girl whose brothers get turned into 6 Crimson Cranes, and she basically gets a curse that she can't speak, and she must complete these really hard tasks in order to save her brothers. And if she says a word, her brothers will die. There are certain aspects to that story that really appealed to me, especially the aspect where the character's not allowed to talk and she has to find other ways to communicate with the other characters to get them to help her, and also how that makes other probably antagonistic characters view them as an outsider. All of that really comes into play in Daughter of the Forest, which I really need to talk about soon. Biggest disappointment so far in 2021? This one's really hard. And I haven't totally given up on the book, but Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I had such high hopes for this novel. This book, I loved the premise, but I just wasn't connecting with the narrator, and I don't know if that's because we're starting out where the narrator doesn't have a memory of who he is and he's figuring it out at the beginning, or if it's because I just didn't like the narrator's personality. I got about 25% of the way through before I decided to put it down for now. But I have heard the audiobook is very good, so I'm gonna give it another try in audiobook form. But sadly, I was disappointed with that, but I'll give it another try. The biggest surprise of the year is the Glass Alliance trilogy by Joanne Hathaway. The first book is Dark of the West, which I previously reviewed. I was going in expecting a historical fantasy, and the political intrigue and the characters and the very vivid descriptions of the world and the sort of forbidden lovers romance that we saw just swept me away. And I thought each book in that trilogy was so well done. I gobbled them up in the months of March and April. Actually, I think I read them all in April. So that was my biggest surprise of the year, and I can't wait to see what the author comes out with next. Favorite new author. I don't want to repeat Joanne Hathaway, so I'm going to say Lewis McMaster Bujold, who is the author of the Vorkosigan Saga, which is a beloved science fiction saga spanning many characters over a long period of time, but she also writes fantasy. I recently read Shards of Honor and Barrayar by her, and I have the next books in the Vorkosigan Saga already. Something about the way she writes and the humor in her characters just clicks with me, in her science fiction at least. So I'm really eager to explore more in the Vorkosigan Saga, but then also see how she writes fantasy. The fantasy novel I picked up by her is Curse of the Challeon. Newest fictional crush. I don't know. I mean, I kind of really like Ethan from Dark of the West, but I did read Oathbringer this year, which means the Stormlight Archive can count for my list. And I continue to adore Adolin, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him. And I haven't read Rhythm of War yet, so who knows? I'm sure he's going to be in peril because he puts himself in peril. But yes, Adolin, I've just loved him throughout the whole series. Adolin is just a good, honorable man most of the time, and just generally tries to be a good person. And I just really like Adolin, so he's going to be my crush out of the books that I read so far this year. Newest favorite character. Cordelia Naismith from the Vorkosigan Saga by Lewis McMaster Bujold. Cordelia she's pretty awesome. She's brave, and she is witty. She can think quickly on her feet. She's a scientist, and I just thoroughly enjoyed her in the first two books of the Vorkosigan Saga. Books that made you cry. Southern Sun, Northern Star by Joanne Hathaway, which was the final book in the Glass Alliance trilogy, because when I finished that book, I honestly laid down on the floor and just had tears in my eyes and was just absorbing the impact of that story. Books that made you happy. The Vanished Days by Susanna Kearsley. I was lucky enough to get approved for an e-arc of this novel, which comes out in October, and I devoured it, and I'll be talking about it when I talk about this month's book wrap-ups. But Susanna Kearsley has done it again. She's given us a really interesting historical intrigue plot with romance, and things are not how they appear, and it was just really well done, and it made me so happy to read it. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. I'm gonna save that for a future video. I recently have been celebrating something and buying myself lots of books, and I want to show you them all in a video coming soon. So I'm going to save that question. And the last one is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I just wrote LOL as my answer, because there are so many to read. But if I'm going to seriously answer the question, then I want to finish the Expanse series by the end of the year. That's a big goal of mine, and read Rhythm of War. If I don't read you, nothing bad can happen to my favorite characters, right? Is that how this works? And that's it for today. That is basically my summary for the books that I've read so far this year. It's been a pretty good reading year so far. I'd like to increase my percentage of science fiction that I've read, and continue also to explore other genres like mystery and thriller as well. Let me know what your favorite book of the year has been so far, and also what is your anticipated read for 2021, so I can add it to my list. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to support your local library. Bye.